Hello everybody, today I'm going to talk about the Xbox One from a perspective of somebody who's owned one and my thoughts on this console 6 months in. Now I've owned this system since about December and I've had this since one of the earlier firmware versions. Now it's at the newest firmware and let me tell you what my thoughts on the console are. So first, let me talk about the console itself and also about how well Microsoft has been supporting it at the end, but let me talk about the console first. On here you've got the console. It's pretty big, but it could be worse. I mean, it doesn't feel as heavy as, say, the original Xbox does to me. I mean, it's pretty big, but considering how the original Xbox and the fat PS3 kind of feel bigger, it's not too bad, especially once you set it down and everything. On top, you've got the vent, as Microsoft wanted tons of cooling. Keep in mind, the Xbox 360, the original one, was poorly designed when it came to cooling, especially when it came to people shoving them in cramped areas with the original chipset, which was kind of picky about cooling, and to the point where they didn't give it enough cooling, and many of the original chipsets failed. However, Falcon ones and later were fine, but anyways, I'm off topic now, but long story short, that's why this thing has a lot of cooling on it. You've got vents here, vent in the back. You've got vents everywhere on this system. And of course, a vent on the side. The whole thing is designed around cooling vents. Now, the PS4 kind of is too, but they took a few more risks by making it smaller, and this is also... maybe that and a few other quality control issues are why you had the PS4 initial failures where the console came out with a high failure rate. The Xbox One didn't so much, but let's take a look at the front and the back and the side. The front, you've got the power button or soft power switch. You just tap it, it makes a nice sound, turns on the eject button. And on the side here, you've got the sync button. And on here, you've got the standard for next gen USB 3.0 port. Now there's another one on the back. On the back here you've got an Ethernet port which comes with the console and does not require you to purchase any $20 USB dongle to use. You've got and it's gigabit, by the way, so if you have a gigabit network it will take advantage of that, especially for downloading. Infrared out, so you could hook up an IR blaster. So say when you're doing stuff with the user interface with setting up the TV and changing channels and stuff, though I did not use this because I do not have an HDMI cable box. Because I do not have that, I cannot test this out, nor can I test the TV watching functions, but I can do everything else on the console. This is the power brick connector, as the console does use a power brick. Now, it sounds controversial at first, but once you think about it, it's actually a good reliability decision due to the fact that if the power brick dies on you, you can just get another power brick without having to disassemble the console and replace it. This is the Connect port. Two other USB 3.0 ports. As you can see, they're labeled Super Speed, so the console has about the same number of USB ports as the original 360 does. And the two HDMI ports, like I said, one's to the TV, one is to the cable box, and this is the analog audio port. On the other side, you just have vents. Now let me talk about the controller. On the top here, you've got an old, original-ish 360 controller, white and everything, complete with the battery pack, and on here you've got the Xbox One controller. Now, Microsoft took into feedback many problems with the original 360 controller, and they redesigned it for the Xbox One. The main thing you'll notice, the D-pad is no longer the old spongy one. Instead, it's a clicky one with a distinct cross shape, while the Xbox 360 had its old spongy D-pad, which was very controversial. While this, on the other end, much better D-pad. You've got the back and start buttons relabeled as, I don't know what these are called still, but they do the exact same thing in the game anyways, so I'm guessing everybody also calls them start and select. I think this is the menu button, and this is another button which I know in the main menu, which is the back button, but I know in the main Xbox One menu, it'll automatically take you to the screen for managing an app. While this lets you in the main menu. The reason they're labeled this way is because of what they do in the Xbox One menu. And this button, instead of these two buttons taking you back and forward like they would in the original Xbox menu and the 360 one, I think this will, like I said, give you the option to manage the app, and this will let you quit the app or go into the app settings, see other stuff, make the app full screen, snap it, whatever. The analog sticks are a lot better. Instead of these old 360 analog sticks which didn't provide too much grip on here, you've got these nicely designed ones with a diamond texture on them and a little grip inside, so you'll like these analog sticks a lot better, and you'll feel like you have a lot more control over the analog sticks than you do with the 360. And it's a lot better, especially considering how this just had an update so you can use it with PC games too. The button layout's the exact same, but the buttons, as you can see, are moved slightly closer, so they're easier to press. And you'll notice that if you put your finger in the old one and then put your finger in the new one, they've made this a lot easier. So for example, it's a lot easier to BXR if you're playing Halo 2 on a PC, or do other stuff in a video game that requires you to use those buttons. The bumpers here click a lot more distinct than these old bumpers, and they're a lot bigger too, as you can see. The buttons on this controller are a lot bigger, and along with the triggers too. So you've got the Xbox 360 controller with its tiny little triggers that make a loud noise. You've got the Xbox One with its big triggers that are dampered so they feel smoother, especially when you're using the controller. And it gives the controller a nice premium feel. And did I mention that another thing the Xbox One controller can do that the 360 one can't is it can actually send individual vibrations to the triggers? And while many games, some games don't use it, many other games do, and you'll notice because it'll just feel like your trigger fingers rumbling and not the joypad itself, like how the 360 has them in the grips. It also has a sync button, and of course a micro USB port instead of how the old 360 had a proprietary one. But here's another feature that the Xbox One controller is better at now. While the Xbox One controller uses batteries, everybody knows that the 360 controller had to use these stupid battery packs, which are easily lost. Microsoft, however, decided this time to put the batteries in the controller itself, so all you have to do is pull and kaboom, here's your batteries. And they realized that since people lose the covers all the time, you can use it without the cover in case, let's just say, you lost that stupid battery pack that you required with the old 360 controller. So, and the best part is that on the bottom here, you don't see a 2.5 or 3.5 because you have to buy an adapter, but that's because with the Xbox One headset, they went from using the old 2.5 connector to a new custom connector which allows you to use, with the adapter or with a normal headset, you can use pretty much these new headsets which sound a lot better. Let me show you. The headset, instead of having a stupid little connector, which is a 2.5 headset jack, which despite being used a lot in 2005, is kind of dead nowadays. Instead of that, you have this new connector and a little thing that clips on which allows you to adjust the volume levels in software and mute and unmute the mic in software, and it even lights up a thing that tells you when it's muted, which is interesting considering how with the old 360 mic you had to rely on a switch and a knob. So this is a lot easier, and the sound quality of this headset is a lot easier on your ears too, as you can hear, if you're playing a game, the voice codec on the Xbox One. Not only does it sound better than the 360s, even the later 360 games, but it makes it a lot easier on your ears too, because you won't be hearing the garbled the garbled codec of the early 360 games, like let's just say go on Halo 3 and go on Black Ops 2, or Black Ops 1 with a 360 controller, and then go on, like, let's just say, Titanfall or some other game with this controller, and you'll notice that the game sounds a lot better with the Xbox One controller. Now, I'm actually going to hook the system up and show you what it's like to use in the real world. Because after all, and also some of the updates too, because after all, you have to know that with this kind of stuff, updates can make a big difference. The Xbox One $500 bundle also comes with a Kinect accessory. The Kinect is basically Microsoft's response to the motion control fad. However, that fad kind of died out, and on the Xbox One, instead of being advertised for motion control, it is used more as a way to get around the main interface of the console and for voice commands. The voice commands are a lot better on the Xbox One than on the 360, as the voice commands work throughout the whole console, and it uses the main voice detection system used in other technologies from Microsoft, such as Windows Phone 8, which works pretty well, and it allows you to say the commands to the console, and it allows it to pick up on it real easily. And it works pretty well at that. However, you might not want to pay $100 more just for voice commands. It also allows you to video chat, as the microphone is and camera are a lot better in the Xbox One Kinect than they are on the 360 Kinect. However, like I said, you might not want to pay $100 just for a camera just to talk to your friends or do Twitch streaming, because that's the only other thing you could be using this for. That is for gaming, of course. Of course, who knows, I know for a fact that Microsoft does have Kinect drivers in the pipeline, and they're eventually going to put them out there, so you can probably use the Xbox One Kinect for the same thing as the 360 Kinect, as in hacker-friendly stuff. Like, that's how it was used a lot. But anyways, the other thing I thought I'd bring up is the power brick. The power brick for the Xbox One is a lot smaller than that of the 360s, especially the original 360, which had its huge 200-watt power brick. It does have a light, though, which has two status indicators. It has orange, which means the console is in standby mode, or there's nothing connected, and there's, of course, the white instead of green, which means the console is turned on and running. And also, it has a power brick about the size of the Wii U's, just slightly taller, but it does have a fan and that stuff for cooling, unlike the Wii U's power brick. Now it's time to turn the console on, but before I do it, there's one last thing I thought I'd mention. You will need, if you do not have a high-definition TV, an adapter. Now, there are various adapters that convert HDMI into various formats, from HDMI to normal video to HDMI to a VGA. From what I know, this will also work with an HDMI to DVI hookup, as seen by the fact that the Xbox One does have a DVI setting in the dashboard. Now, there's one other thing that I'd mention. Well, the last thing. I know there are too many other things, but here's something undocumented. If you hold down the eject button with no disc and then turn the console on, you'll actually get 480p video output, which is good if you're using a converter for standard VGA. If you hold both like this, and when you hear that sound again, you can just look back at the TV and you'll know you're getting 480p video output, because you'll see letter boxes. And even though you can switch it out of it when you turn the console on, you can't switch it back into it unless you turn the console off and hold those two buttons with or without a disc in it. But now that I've got that little thing out of the way, let me show you how the console actually works in the real world. And one more thing, if you set it to 480p, it kind of breaks snapping due to the low resolution, and you'll have to change it back to 720p to properly snap an app. And I'll set it back to 720p, but it will scrunch if you're using an adapter instead of letterboxing it, so I'll get back to that in a second. But another thing, when you turn the Xbox One on, when it's not connected to power, it will take a while to boot up. But once it's booted up, then it only takes a few seconds to get everything loaded. And it's pretty fast once it's all plugged in, and once you just turn it on, it boots up real fast. And now it's time for me to get the controller and stuff. Now, this is the Xbox One main menu, and that's my friend who just signed in. And now, the main menu of the console is pretty simple, really. It signs you in automatically when Connect is on. Now, I've turned it off for this video because it actually has great voice recognition to the point where if you say Xbox when Connect is on, it will actually think you're saying a voice command. However, you can turn that off, and it says to turn on Connect in settings. So, long story short, this is the main menu. You've got your pins here, which are apps you've pinned to the dashboard so you can access it without having to go to My Games and Apps. You've got the store here, which has all the games, the movies, your music, the apps. And right here you've got the home, which is like the 360 dashboard, but instead of having the dashboard, you're just taken to this screen when you press X. And if you just press X in, like, let's just say the settings menu, it takes it back here. So what you've got here is your disc, your My Games and Apps, which, as you can see, it's always there along with snapping. You've got Upload, which is the program that lets you view videos you've taken. Upload Studio, which allows you to edit and upload to SkyDrive the video clips you've recorded, so you can, like, let's just say edit them in YouTube. Your achievements, your games, I mean the last stuff you've played, which is Halo Spartan Assault. As you can see, I'm going to open up my friends list. Now, the only problem is, at first the dashboard was kind of slow, but ever since the updates, this has been a lot faster, and compared to the original version of the Xbox One dashboard, the console has gotten a lot faster. Now, the only problem is that you cannot send voice messages, but nearly everything you do on the Xbox 360, you can do here. However, the only problem is you can not send voice messages. As you can see, I'll hit new message. You can only type out a message. You cannot send voice messages, but you can do party chat, and the console does have an app for it. For example, if you hit Snap, it'll allow you to snap apps like Game DVR, which lets you record footage, Audio CD Player, Internet Explorer. So, for example, you can put a music CD in if you're playing a digital game, and you can also do other stuff such as watch TV, which is a well-known feature that many fans and critics have pointed out. Watch YouTube, listen to Xbox music. The only problem is you can't do it in the background and the app has to be snapped, but at least it lets you play your music while you're playing a video game, unlike a certain other game console and certain other stuff, but it lets you do that. Now it's time to go to My Games and Apps. Now, as you can see here, I have all these games currently installed on the hard drive, some demos of NBA Live and Killer Instinct, because that was a free game. You've got some games with gold games right here. Apps, achievements, Blu-ray player, Game DVR, Twitch, Upload, Xbox Music. This team comes with a lot of apps. And you can actually find more in the Xbox One store, along with some tutorials, achievements, Audio CD player, Blu-ray player. It basically, as usual, but Blu-ray player also lets you play DVDs too. So let's just say you want to watch a DVD, you can do that. And I mentioned the video output is not DHCP encrypted, so you can use a capture card with this, just like with the 360. Time to go to games in the store. The store has a lot of games, and it now supports external storage, so you can plug a USB 3.0 hard drive in and install games. So you can see many games here on there. And as you can see, there are plenty you can download too. Of course, you can also put game discs in and it will install and let you play. However, just like the PS3, every game requires an install. So if you put a game in, you have to wait for it to install. That's the only bad part about this, but once it does, you'll notice games pushing a lot more, and for example, Dead Rising 3 or Battlefield 4, and it will load from the hard drive instead of a disk drive, so you won't have to worry about your disk drive wearing out because you played too many matches of Call of Duty, for example. And another thing I thought I mentioned that's cool about this console, though, let me show you the real cool part. You know how I'm able to snap? Well, even if I load a game up, like, let's just say Dead Rising 3. Now, this game takes a while to load, but at least it does not kill your disk drive trying to load, so you won't have a PS3 style problem of my disk drive's broken again. You can actually push the button and then you can load another app, like let's just say listen to music, you can message your friends, get into a party chat, watch a YouTube video, Skype. It's pretty amazing what you can do while you're multitasking, and especially for a game console, this is pretty big, of course. I mean, especially with the Skyping and YouTube watching. And another cool part is that the game, when you turn off the console with standby mode, with the digital game at least, I haven't tried it with the disc-based game. When you turn the console off and put it in standby mode, with the digital game, it'll be right back up. And let me show you how fast it takes to boot when it's in standby mode. I'm going to connect the controller. Look at that. Now, it does not load the game up. Oh, actually it did. Look, it's still there at the press start screen. It's kind of like the PSP or the PlayStation Vita, where you can, quote, turn it off or put it in standby mode, and it will do it. Oh, and I've got Connect turned off, but like I said, normally it'll sign you in the second it sees you. Sometimes it doesn't do it as quick, but it works. Of course, you don't need Connect, and honestly, if I was buying the system again, I probably would buy the Connectless bundle, as Connect is optional, and unless you're playing a fitness game or Twitch streaming, it's totally unneeded. Graphic-wise and gameplay-wise, the console is pretty amazing, especially when you have the controller like I just praised earlier, or when you have the games themselves, which many of them show off things that just couldn't be done on the old Xbox 360. I mean, you'll have games such as Dead Rising 3 with its thousands of zombies, or Battlefield 4 with 64 real physical people in a server. And you'll have stuff like that on your Xbox One. And did I mention that Battlefield 4 runs at 60 FPS most of the time? And honestly, it also comes with games with gold, and still the best online experience you can get on a console. And let me tell you something else. Microsoft, they've been aggressive at patching in features that people requested. For example, when the console first came out, Party Chat was pretty broken, and sure, of course, it also didn't have friends lists. Both of these have been patched, and I mean, not friends lists, I mean friends list notifications. I forgot a word there, but when it came out, when when somebody logged in, it wouldn't say their username. And did I mention that, like I said here, the system has gotten a lot faster? For example, you can put, even though it lets you put your real name, I don't want to do that, but you can do stuff such as add people or send friend requests back. I mean, they made this a lot easier. For example, especially as the console came out, the friend system was a little weirder, but they've removed the friends list limit too. So somebody sent me, I'm gonna add this person as a friend because they added me, and as you can see, many features of the console have been improved with it. So this console, it's a lot better than the Xbox 360 was, and I guarantee as time goes on, it's going to get even better, because as you can see, Microsoft, they've been aggressively patching it. And like, for example, they just added external storage. They just oh my god, is there a fly next to... They've also just added other features. And honestly, for example, like, let me just say They fixed many bugs too, and honestly, this system, Microsoft's been aggressively patching it. I totally recommend it because they're doing a pretty good job at supporting this system. So all my thoughts on the system, I do not regret it one bit. I mean, it's got tons of games. It's got it's got more games coming out. It's got all these things you can do with it. And honestly, for $400, you can't go wrong. Especially if you have tons of Xbox Live friends and if you own a 360. The Xbox One is an ideal upgrade path for $400. Or $500 if you want to use Kinect. Or if you're trying to get your parents to give you a reason to buy an Xbox One and you just tell them, oh, it has Kinect. Because that's a reason many people got 360. And let me show you Kinect in action. Xbox. It's still initializing. Xbox. As you can see, it's not working right now. I think I'll have to reset the system or something. Xbox. Go to Halo Spartan Assault. As you can see, it does it right there. Xbox. Go home. Xbox. Friends. Friends. Go to Friends. Favorites. All. Messages. Message 1. Close. Go home. Xbox. Go home. Friends. Item 1. Stop listening. So, the voice command feature works pretty good, but, I mean, it could be better, but honestly, it's only good if you can't find your controller, because many of the things, or if you're saying to record your game footage, because, for example, I'm going to turn the system off now, and yeah, did I mention that, like I said, it does now offer standby because they patched it in, which is a pretty cool feature. I thought my Xbox One was glitchy at first, but it's actually a nice new feature that they added. And my final thoughts on this, like I said, and well, the first thing was the command to record game footage to say Xbox record that, but my final thought on this is $400 if you're looking for a game console and you just want to play the video games. It's a pretty good game console, especially if all your friends own Xboxes. And like, if you have tons of Xbox Live friends, you'll want this console, and it doesn't. And it also helps that Microsoft's online service has a better reputation than Sony's does, especially as Sony's has a reputation for going down frequently, while Microsoft's, theirs rarely goes down, or if it does, it's not a maintenance period like with Sony, and they seem to have those a lot with PlayStation Network. And I'm not making this up because, as you can see, I do own a PS3 and I do own a Vita, so I'd go with the Xbox One if you're looking for a good game console, and these are my thoughts on it. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more, and I'll probably hook my Xbox One up to VGA after this.